Availability with Jeff Gordon, driver of the number 24 AARP credit cards from Chase Chevrolet. It's a mouthful. Got a new paint scheme this weekend. Talk a little bit about that and being here in Dover.
Yeah, we've always had great ties to Wilmington, through DuPont over the years, and here in recent years, now we have a great partnership with Chase, with AARP and Drive to End Hunger, and they've really contributed a lot of support, awareness, and funding towards this program through Chase Credit Card Services with the AARP reward card. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Not very often I get to drive a white car, so people are going to have a hard time seeing me out there, but it certainly looks good, and it's a great program. We were up in Wilmington and went to the Food Bank of Delaware and packaged some food, some boxes of food. So, this program it's so rewarding to be able to go to places like that and get people volunteering and packaging these foods that get delivered to those older Americans, especially that are in need.
Talk a little bit about your season thus far and being here in Dover this weekend.
Our season's been terrible. We've run not very good at the beginning of the season, and then we've run, good at certain places, and every time we're running good, other than Darlington in recent, I feel like Martinsville and Darlington have been two where we put together, solid races. Other than that, I can't say we've done much. It just hasn't been our year, and we're going to fight like we did last year as hard as we can to make up for it. A lot of racing left to go, and I think our cars certainly continue to improve, which always helps put a string of good finishes together to get ourselves further up in the points.
We'll take questions for Jeff. Please raise your hand. We'll get a mic to you. We'll start up front with Claire.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. You have an average finish here of 12, and of course Jimmy Johnson has an 8.6 average finish, but he's really, really good here. What is it that makes, since you're a teammate of his, Jimmy Johnson so good at this track? And can you share information that will help that, or is he just good at this track?
He's good at a lot of tracks. Jimmy's just one of those guys that continues to raise the bar everywhere. And, as good as Jimmy is, Chad's that good. The team is that good. The organization, the engines, the chassis. It's just they've got a great combination with a lot of confidence in one another. When Jimmy comes here, he has a lot of confidence. It's a track where you certainly have to push the car hard, but finding that balance, and it's tricky because there's a little bit of a compromise. It's not like Darlington where the ends of the track are shaped different. It's just the concrete is the surface is slightly different. It's more abrasive at one side than the other, and so the balance of the car does change from one end to the other. But Jimmy just has a great way of getting the balance right at this track, and it usually means you got to be a little bit free, and he's good at driving a free race car.
When a teammate is really good at a track, like he's good at Charlotte or he's good at Dover, but like you said, he's good everywhere, can you pick up things from them that would help you here?
Well, you tried, and I think this is the part that's so important as a driver, as a crew chief, engineers. You try to know what your driver needs, what has worked well for you as a team, and then look at the information from your teammates and see what they're doing that seems to be working well for them, that seems to be pretty constant, that you think can work with your combination. And sometimes we're getting the same grip level and balance in the car, but we're doing it in a different way. And that's just because we all have a slightly different feel. Casey Kane's a perfect example right now. They're very fast, and they're doing it a completely different way than the rest of us are. And you can't sit there and chase that. You've got to find out what in that package they have will work with how you like to drive the car, and will make you go fast.
Okay, we've got a question right here behind you to your left.
Jeff, Don Marcus from the Baltimore Sun. When a guy like Travis Pastrana comes into a sport like this, do guys look at that and say, what's he doing here? Or do, maybe like when Michael Jordan tried playing baseball, or is he welcomed as a competitor and give him credit for trying to do this?
Well, I think, in any sport, you have to earn your respect, whether you're, a young talent that's come up through the field that you've watched and said, oh, okay, the guy's really talented, but when he gets here, he's going to still have to earn those stripes and that respect. And I think in Travis's case, it's very similar, in which we look at him and say, okay, he doesn't have a lot of oval experience and driving race cars on ovals, but he certainly has plenty of bravery and guts and not afraid to learn and try new things. And so you watch to see how he's going to do. And he earns his respect through his actions. And, I think there's been times where he's impressed me. He's done better than I thought that he would do. And then other times he's gone through lessons that you kind of expect young guys, to go through, especially those that don't have a lot of oval experience. But, luckily he's with a good team, and that certainly helps the learning curve go much faster.
And just to follow up, is age a factor in this in terms of guys been doing this and sort of make the natural progression for years as opposed to jumping in this at he's almost 30 years old?
Well, I think that, to me, I look more at an experience level. I think that if you're driving one particular type of vehicle for a long period of time and then you try to make the jump over to the Nationwide Truck or Cup Series, you're going to have a hard time because you've learned habits that they're not necessarily bad habits, but they're going to be hard to change. And that, as you get older, that gets tougher. We all know that. But in Travis's case, he's not really driven a lot of things that are very, he's driven rally cars, motorcycles, late model. He's driven a lot of different things. So he hasn't really had any habits that he has to break himself with. So I don't think age is working against him too much in that case.
Thanks.
Okay, we want to take our next question up front here with Brian, then go back to Dustin.
Brian Nelson, Motor Racing Network. Let's talk Pocono real quick. And Denny was just in here saying how once they pave the track, it's a whole new track. It's a whole different animal. Have you found that to be the case? How has your approach to Pocono changed since the repave, and maybe kind of your thoughts about what it takes to be victorious?
Yeah, I'm really anxious to get some information from Stuart Haas that was up there this week. I feel like of all the repaves, Pocono is the one that stands out, in my opinion, because they didn't go down this traditional route of what's happening right now in repaves. Seems like every other track is using same company, same type of material, and you pretty much know what you're going to have. Pocono went a little bit different route and tried to stick with something that's a little bit more, of what we're looking for, which is a little bit more abrasive, which is going to wear and age a little bit faster. So I'm anxious to get there this year to see, how that process is working. I thought last year in the race, the pace did seem to drop a little bit as the runs went on, which to me was a very positive thing, and what Goodyear's looking for tire wear and what the competitors are looking for better racing.
Okay, we'll take our next question from Dustin.
Dustin Long, Motor Racing Network. Jeff, saw the comment you tweeted out, I think a day after the Charlotte race about hitting the wall, not being a safer barrier there. Have you talked to anybody, track, NASCAR in relation to that, or are you kind of done talking because you kind of find those spots? And you talked about how hard it was. What were you feeling?
Well, I found the one over off of 2 here, and they haven't fixed that one. I saw some in the Truck Series found it too, and they haven't done that. So I'm not anticipating any change. I understand their theory is, they go through their testing and see where multiple impacts have happened and highest impacts and those things. But I got to tell you, that was one of the hardest hits I've had in a race car. And it was the type of impact it was. I got hit from the left, so it shifted everything to the left, and then I hit the wall on the right, so I went from left to right. And I had a rough week. So, I didn't quite understand the pain that I was feeling that night until I went back and watched the video and realized the angle that I hit, as well as the fact that there was no safer barrier. I had no idea there was no safer barrier at that dog leg, on the front straight. It blew my mind that there wasn't one. I mean, there's one like at the start finish line, then it stops, and then there's one turn one and goes around to turn two. That kind of shocked me. So I certainly said something, and when I get the opportunity, I'll talk to others as well, about it. As I've learned in the past, they're gonna look at those circumstances and make their calls based on that. And me sitting down having a conversation with them isn't necessarily going to change that, but it doesn't mean it's going to stop me from doing it.
Okay, we'll take our next question right here, and then we'll go back to Dan. Right behind you.
Scott Walsh from the Scranton Times. Jeff, just a little bit more about Pocono. How do you think the Gen 6 car will run there, and how tough is it to go from a place like this one week to a place like Pocono the following week, two totally different tracks?
Yeah, the first couple laps on the track are challenging and kind of eye-opening of just how fast it is and how deep in the corners you drive, how fast you got to drive through the tunnel turn. That tunnel turn is, to me, always been one of the most kind of hair-raising experiences, if you want to call it, on the circuit. I mean, it just takes full commitment, and when you hit it right, it's a beautiful thing. And when you don't hit it right, it gets your attention. So, to me, the first few laps will sort of be that building up, and then once you get through the first 2 or 3 laps, then it's business as usual. And that happens almost every weekend at every track we go to. But Pocono is a very unique track, and you can go out there thinking you're pushing hard and be a second off the pace, So it's a track where a lot of speed can be lost or gained based on how hard you push it, and finding the edge and the limits is a little bit tougher on such a big racetrack with 3 very unique corners. So looking forward to getting there, see what the grip level is with the Gen 6 car. I think it's going to be very good. And anytime you go faster and you have a car that has more grip and downforce like we have now with this car, you start to find what things you're going to be battling with fairly quickly, whether it be the balance of the car, brakes, there's RPMs on the engines, all those types of things that will start to come into play that we can sort of anticipate, but not fully. That's why I look forward to downloading with Stuart Haas on their test.
We're not going to be able to get to all of the questions for Jeff. We'll take the final 2. We got Dan and David.
Dan Galston, the Associated Press. Jeff, what did you think about cars being allowed to be worked on the red in Charlotte, and how does it compare? How did what happened last week compare to your situation in Martinsville and in a few years ago with the asphalt? And does there need to be some sort of set policy on that?
Well, I think they just set the new precedent, in my opinion, which I think is the correct thing to do. I think when something like that happens, like what happened last week, and same thing at Martinsville, when something happens at Martinsville like that, where the track comes apart, I think that they should throw a red flag and fix the problem, and then allow the teams, to make repairs. Unfortunately, that didn't happen back in the day when we had that issue at Martinsville. But I agree with that. Those are things outside your control as a driver, as a team. It's not fair, to those competitors that could have, really ended their race or really taken them out of competition. And I was pretty proud of the way that they handled it. But nothing's going to take back what happened at Martinsville. I think even if they gave us 15 minutes to fix it, I'm not so sure we could have fixed it back then. That was a big chunk of concrete. There was more damage than just body damage, but we would like to have at least tried.
Final question, David.
Yeah, David Newton, ESPN.com. Jeff, I know you said you understand the theory behind how they make decisions on where safer barriers are, but do you understand why there aren't safer barriers just everywhere now?
No. Cost. There's only one reason. Cost. That's it.